to A Guide to Freelance Art for Artists and Employers. I'm going to try to talk slow. I have bad habit of talking very fast. I may go a bit over time, and I apologize in advance for that. But anyway, let's begin then. So, my name is Heady-Carroll, and before I do my presentation, I'd like to give you a bit of background as to who I am. And like you mentioned, last year I graduated with a master's in game art, and I just want to give you a brief summary of what it is that I did. For my master's project, I pinpointed the principles of stylization and tried to figure out practical applications that different styles have for video games. And the method in which I displayed this knowledge that I accumulated during my project was through stylized animal character design. Now, very briefly, my process was getting in front of live animals and observing them, doing life studies of these animals. I also did skeleton and musculature studies. With all this realistic anatomy study, I then tried to break animals down to their essential visual elements. And then finally, I tried to enhance these designs through a pretty typical character design process of thumbnailing, finalizing design. I also made maquettes out of clay to use as a reference when creating model sheets and reference art. And in the end, I ended up with 3 animal characters: a pelican, a lion, and a Komodo dragon. I did way more than this, but this is just a brief summary. Then I was done with school, so what I've been doing since then. One thing I've done is I am now the regional organizer for the Global Game Jam in the Netherlands. Just a short little plug here. I'm also hosting a jam, the Warp Zone Free Jam in Amsterdam, which is taking place in the Vondelbunker, and there's still place, so anyone's welcome to come party with us if you feel so inclined. But the thing that takes up most of my time now is freelance commercial art. These are just some of the commercial projects that I've been working on in games and animation since I've graduated. Freelance is a very difficult job. Dare I say near impossible, but it is so rewarding because you get to work with so many different people from all over the world. You get to work on lots of different types of projects, and okay, you can't necessarily pick what work you want because you've got to eat. But you can say no to things, or if a client is a dick, you can just say, no, I'm not going to work with you anymore. And freelance is what I'm going to be talking to you about today. Now, for clarity, this presentation is not about breaking into the field of freelance, or promoting yourself, or finding work as a freelancer. I'm sorry. Honestly, all of these things could be a presentation in and of themselves. I wanted to talk about something a bit different. What I'm going to talk about is the relationship between these 2 individuals here. Freelance artist and the employer who hires the freelance artist. The problem with these 2 is they don't get on very well. There is a lot of miscommunication, a lot of mistrust. I'm not sure if people were here for the last session, but clients can be total idiots and artists can be total idiots, and there's a lot of problems that come from these people. So using my first-hand experience as a freelancer, I'm hoping I can bring these 2 parties together and give a bit of clarity as to how we can work better together. So the way I'm going to structure this presentation is I'm going to take you through the entire process of a freelance commission. Here's the process. It starts with project negotiation, where the client tells the artist what it is that they want. Price negotiation is where the artist and the client figure out how much it's going to cost to do this. Work in progress, where the artist shows work in progress and the client gives pointers to make sure it's going in the right direction. And in the end, delivery. The delivery is the exchange of the product for the money. I'm also going to hit on a couple of common courtesies that I'd like to mention. So without further ado, let's begin. Starting with project negotiation. Now, for employers, during this vital first step, it is very important that you give a lot of information to your artists. Give them too much information. What art style do you want it to be? What are the exact pixel dimensions? Is there a budget? What's the deadline? And if so, what is the deadline? What package do you want them to use? What file format do you want the final product to be? If it's animated, how many frames of animation does it have? These are just some examples of things that you can tell the artist. Tell them everything that you can. And if you don't know something, you can talk to the artist and try to figure out what's possible. And if you want to leave something up to the artist, then tell them that they have creative liberty, but then respect whatever it is that they decide to do in the end. Artists, you can help your employer with the scale of a project. Very often, employers are not artists themselves, But you're a professional, and you know the ins and outs of what goes into creating art, what is and isn't possible. I'd like to give you an example from my professional life. I once was commissioned to work on a 2D fighting game, and they said that they wanted the characters to be like the Street Fighter characters from Street Fighter 2. The problem with this is that the Street Fighter sprites are very large pixel art, very detailed, with a lot of frames of animation. It would take a lot of time for me to do this, and more importantly, a lot of money, therefore. And I knew this was time and money that they couldn't afford. So I said, well, if you scale it down, and you do it in this style, and cut down the frames of animation, you can still get the retro feel that you want, but for significantly cheaper and much quicker. And sure enough, they went with that, and I got paid for it. So you can help your employer figuring out what is and isn't possible using your professional knowledge, and sometimes you can get jobs out of it as well. Oh dear, pay negotiations. This is where a lot of the problems come in. Employers, dear employers, just pay your artists, okay? No freebies, no revenue shares, no contests, and only pay the person who wins the contest. If you're planning on funding your game through Kickstarter, you can't tell the artist we're going to raise 10,000 euros as our budget for art and you'll get all that money. You can't promise that. Essentially, you're saying, I want this much money. It's not appealing to an artist. I know this sounds like it goes without saying, but I have so many clients who said, we've got this much money and we're going to raise it on Kickstarter. It's like, you can't promise me that. So don't do this. And finally, unpaid internships are poison. Now, of course, there's exceptions to this, but there are too many companies that are either making more than enough money to pay their artists for their full-time professional work. But even worse, and you get this a lot in Holland, you have these games companies who every 6 months, they get interns in, they don't pay them, sometimes they're actually getting money from the government, they should be paying them and they don't, and then 6 months are up and they get rid of them, they bring new ones in and they don't do any work, and the interns do all the work while they make money from these interns. And this is really terrible for the art world because it means that there's basically no jobs. If anyone here is going to start a company when you're done with school, or you already have a company, do not do this. It is poisonous. And this goes for you too, artists. Don't accept these terms and conditions if you can help it. Because the thing is, okay, you have employers who are malicious, but mostly they're not malicious and out like, hey, we're going to scam all the artists, no, they just don't know how damaging it is. But when you accept these terms and conditions, essentially, you're telling them that it's okay, and it isn't. For the artists in the audience now, this game art, this thing you've been studying 4+ years for, it's not a hobby anymore, okay? It's a career, and you need to treat it like a career. And employers, since being a freelance artist is a career, don't contact an artist unless you're serious. Unless you're willing to put down serious money, don't expect serious work. And think about what it is you're offering the artist. I'd like to give another example from my professional career. I was once contacted to do all the assets for a platformer game for the iPad, like Mario or whatever. And they said they want 10 backgrounds, and they want 20 animated sprites. And they were going to pay me 50 euros. Now let's break that down. That's 30 assets, roughly. So that's about €1.25 per asset. Every asset would take me probably more, but on average, let's say 3 hours. It would probably take me way more than that, but minimally, whatever, 3 hours. So if you break that down, that's 40 cents an hour. Now that's okay if you're if you're a child working in a sweatshop in a third world country, but that's not the case here.
Not okay either.
I mean that if you're working in a sweatshop and you're paid 40 cents, it's like, oh boy, I'm kidding. But anyway, the point is that think about what you're offering the artist and make sure it's worth their time, because we have so little of it, so please don't waste it. Another person who has similar opinion about this kind of paying the artist is sci-fi writer Harlan Ellison. I love this grumpy old bastard. And I'd like to show you a clip of him speaking. He's talking specifically about writers, but I think pretty much everything he says applies to all artists. So I'd like to show you this clip.
Get a call yesterday from a little film company down here in the Valley, and they're doing the packaging for MGM on, not MGM, for Warner Brothers on Babylon 5, which I worked on. And I did a very long, very interesting on-camera interview about the making of Babylon 5 early on when Joe Straczynski hired me. And they want to use it. A young woman calls me and she says, we'd like to use it on the DVD. Can that be arranged? And I said, absolutely. All you got to do is pay me. And she said, what? I said, you got to pay me. She said, well, everybody else is just, doing it for nothing. I said, everybody else may be an asshole, but I'm not. I said, by what right would you call me and ask me to work for nothing? Do you get a paycheck? Well, yes. I says, does your boss get a paycheck? Do you pay the telecine guy? Do you pay the cameraman? Do you pay the cutters? Do you pay the teamsters when they schlep your stuff on the trucks? Then how don't you pay us? How would you go to a gas station and ask them to give you free gas? Would you go to the doctor and have them take out your spleen for nothing? How dare you call me and want me to work for nothing? Well, it would be good publicity. I said, lady, tell that to someone a little older than you who has just fallen off the turnip truck. There is no publicity value in my essay, my interview, being on your DVD. If you sell 2,000 of them, it'll be great. And what are people going to say? Ooh, I really like the way that guy gave that interview. I wonder if he's ever written a book. Let me go and buy it. There's no publicity value. The only value for me is if you put money in my hand. Cross my palm with silver. You can use my essay. You can use my interview. And she says, well, all right, thank you. And she hangs up. I'll never hear from them. They want everything for nothing. They wouldn't go for 5 seconds without being paid. And they'll bitch about how much they're paid and want more. I should do a freebie for Warner Brothers? What is Warner Brothers out, with an eye patch and a tin cup on the street? Fuck no. They always want the writer to work for nothing. And the problem is that there's a goddamn many writers who have no idea that they're supposed to be paid every time they do something. They do it for nothing. Good, they're going to look at me. I'm going to be noticed. What? You tell me, are they any less the media whore than I? I think not. They just haven't, nobody's offered to buy their soul. I sell my soul, but at the highest rates. The highest rates. I don't take a piss without getting paid for it. I get so angry about this because you're undercut by all the amateurs. It's the amateurs who make it tough for the professionals. Because when you act professional, these people are so used to getting it for nothing and for mooching and for being able to pass off this bullshit. I mean, they don't even send you a copy of the DVD. You have to call them and say, where's the DVD? Well, it's been out for 6 months. You could go to the store and buy it. You could go to the store and buy it, motherfucker. You go to the store and buy it. You send me the goddamn DVD now, or I'm going to come down to your house and I'm going to burn it to the ground. How about that? Well, you don't have to get mean about it. Yeah, I do have to get mean about it. 6 months since the damn thing came out.
So let's continue on that positive note. You're laughing your head off. Can you relate?
Yes, good, huh?
So good. I love Harlan Ellison. Anyway, let's continue. Work in progress. I'm going over time now, and I apologize, but I'm going to continue on. Employers, of course, it's very important that when you pay someone for something, you get what you need. But don't be a meddler. It's very easy to think that every time you're sent a work in progress, you need to say something about it. But the truth is you don't. And if you do have to give feedback, then don't be a dick about it. There's too many clients out there who I've worked with once and only once, because every time I sent a work in progress, they would give some kind of thing that needs to be changed, and it would be this tiny little thing that wouldn't make a difference. So they're just doing it to make them look like the boss and look like they know what they're doing. And they'd be so rude about it. They would be so rude in their feedback. So don't be a meddler. It doesn't make you look professional. It just makes you annoying. It makes people not want to work with you. Artists. This is an important one. If you send work to a client that you haven't been paid for yet, you have to protect it. So watermark it, make the resolution low, send it as a file type that's unusable, or a mixture of these, because work gets stolen all the time. This happens so often, and you need to protect yourself against it. If you don't, and your work gets stolen, you kind of got no one to blame but yourself, because this is so frequent. You have to protect yourself. Print out. Delivery. Remember that anxiety I was talking about earlier? A lot of it comes from this stage, because it's when one party can run away with the other person's half of the deal and get away with it. Excuse me. So I have a process that I use that I'd like to share that maybe you can use. It's worked very well for me in the past. Here it is. Throughout the process, I will send work in progresses that are protected, are watermarked, and the client will give me pointers, make sure it's going in the right direction. If it's a very long project, they may pay me in intervals in between, but at some point it gets approved. Bing, it's finished. First, the employer sends me my payment, and then I send the unprotected final product that they paid me for. The reason this process works is because it means that the client doesn't get anything they can use until they pay for it, but the client also knows that the work is finished. I wouldn't spend 30 hours working on assets and then just not send it to them. It doesn't make sense. So I found that this is the fairest, easiest way to deal with this problem. So that was the process. I've got two more little common courtesies I want to cover. The first one is for employers, my darling employers. Answer your damn emails. Answer your damn emails. I can't stress this enough. Now, I'm very empathetic, and I can understand that you've asked this artist and they're excited, and then maybe you find someone cheaper, or maybe you kind of don't really want to work with them, or maybe it's more work than you thought, and you're kind of like, oh, I don't want to work on this anymore. And then you've got to contact them and hurt their feelings, or maybe disappoint them, or upset them, and you don't really, so you just leave it. Don't do this. It is really rude and really inconveniencing, and this is why. It is not uncommon for freelancers to be working on multiple projects at the same time. I'll often be working on 6, even 10 games projects all at the same time. So I've got to be real careful with my schedule. I've got to be real strict with my schedule. And if I'm waiting for an answer from you to get the okay to start working on something, I've got to keep my schedule open, and it's stressful and it's difficult and it could have been avoided if you just told me that it's not happening anymore. So answer your damn emails, okay? Okay, you guys? Artists, have patience with employers and explain things to them. Like I said, a lot of employers are not artists themselves, and you are a professional. So you're going to get these employers who want this massive thing on a tiny budget in no time. And that's okay. In this case, you should explain to them, it's not possible, this is why it's not possible, and here's a better way to do it. And this is why. It means that that client will never do that to an artist again, because they've been educated about it, so it saves artists a lot of bullshit. But also, then the client knows what is and isn't possible for the artist, so they can get what they need easier and mentally visualize what it is that they want quicker. So it's better for everybody. So, for my conclusion, the ideal employer pays fair, is clear on what they want, and they only provide critique when it's needed. The ideal artist is versatile, both in style and management. They have to be highly self-motivated and disciplined, and they have to be a good communicator. My final note for this presentation is, be nice. See, artists and employers are not enemies. There's a mutual benefit that we can get from each other. And I am so privileged that I can work as a freelancer, because it's really fucking hard. But it could be so much easier if these two people would just be a bit more considerate, a bit more honest, a bit more empathetic, and a bit fairer. Now, all of you guys out here are studying for your masters, and maybe you're already freelancing, or you already have companies, or later you're planning on starting a company or becoming a freelancer at some point. But the point is that you guys, you're the future. I know it's a really cliche thing to say, but you guys are the future. And the morals and the things that you do, the morals you hold up and the things that you do, will dictate your generation's games industry and creative industry. And if you apply these principles to the way that you treat one another, you can make freelance a lot easier, because it's already so difficult, but you can make it so much easier and make it less fraught with peril. So be nice, you guys. Thank you very much.